Hi, everybody. It's Kim Carpenter here, the founder of World Changing Women, and welcome to Conversations That Matter, where we host powerful conversations with women leaders around hot topics that call forth our greatest capacities for leadership, creativity, and moving the ball forward in our careers and businesses in order to make a big difference in the world. And I'm so excited to be talking with Kelly Morgan today. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Kim.
Hey, good to have you here. Kelly is my personal writing teacher and mentor, and the person that I go to when I need to tap into and unleash my creativity. She's known as a poet, a muse. She helps people develop their books and write their books. She's a teacher. She's an entrepreneur. She's been working with some incredible creative people in Hollywood for decades. And we're going to be talking today about why it's important to unleash our stories in the world, why it's important to be telling those stories, and why it's specifically important for women who really want to make a big difference through business. Kelly, so glad to have you here.
Oh, I am so glad to be here, Kim. Yes.
Yeah, so why don't awesome. And I just want to say hi to who's here. Kim, so good to see you here. She's going to catch the replay. It's 3 a.m. in her city. Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you so much for being up at 3 a.m. And anyone else who's watching the replay, welcome. I also want to invite everyone who's watching to just type your name. Let us know where you are watching from, so we can welcome you here. Let us know a little bit about what kind of business you have, or if you're wanting to create a business, let us know that too. We'll be monitoring the comments in the chat, and we really want this to be engaging as we talk about the importance of telling your story. So, Kelly, why don't you give us a little background? I'd love to hear a little bit of your story of like how you came into this and how you started helping people unleash their stories.
Sometimes I think we're just born to do something. And I came into this way before I even knew anything about writing. When I was 10 years old, I went to a family reunion on my dad's side of the family. And there was a lot of them surviving the Depression and the mother dying and the father going out, as my Graham used to say, for a pack of cigarettes and never coming back, and being embarrassed. They had to pick food for the, grass for the rabbits when the school bus went by, and shooting rats out of the rain barrel. I mean, they really, they really survived the Depression.
Wow.
And what struck me is, even with all the tragedy, the mother dying and all of that, was how light their stories were. And when the five brothers and sisters got together, there was so much humor. There was, and even when there wasn't humor, there was a lightness. And even in the sadness shared together, it was a big thing. I didn't even want to leave the room. I was 10 years old. And then when I got sober, when I was in my early 30s, I walked into another room, and same thing. People were telling their stories about how they'd gotten sober, and there was a lightness in that room. There was humor. And what I've realized is that when you write your story, the tragedy of the story with some distance that comes through writing, not necessarily through time, but through writing and just looking at it, actually causes comedy. And I don't mean the funny comedy necessarily always that you see on TV, but comedy meaning a lightness in the story. And so I've been hooked. As an adult, I was a journalism major in school and went off on an advertising marketing segue, worked for the Chicago Tribune, helped retailers get their stories together. And but now I just love helping people tell their stories for business or for their personal self-actualization, whether it be fiction or nonfiction. You learn a lot about yourself. So
It's so true. It's so true. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I mean, every time I talk to you, I get another little nugget of your personal story. And even how you describe the details of what was going on with your family members in the depression, it's like I'm transported right there. I can see it. I can feel it. I can sense into what that experience must have been like. And then, yes, with a little bit of distance through the telling of the story, there is a lightness that comes through. Like I'm sure in the moment, spraying rats out of your water source is not fun. But it's like, okay, right? Like there's some lightness in that. It's like I could just see the little rats scurrying away. It's like, oh my gosh, here we are again. And this is life. This is humanity, right? And there are so many things that feel very tragic to me in the world right now, and where I love to put my hope and my faith is in humanity. I'm wearing my Be the Change t-shirt for myself, as much as to remind everybody else around me too. But it's like, yeah, like there is beauty even in the tragedy. There is lightness even in the saddest of moments. There is something in the telling of the story that helps bring our hearts together. And I feel like, especially for women who really want to make a big difference in the world through the vehicle of their business or initiatives or whatever they're doing, the ability to tell powerful stories is probably the most important thing, the most important tool that we can have to touch other people's hearts. So I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I have learned as much about myself in the last 4 years of putting together my content, my emails, my website, as I learned when I was writing poetry or when I was writing to just discover myself. Because in order to go online, I had to get so clear. Even I'd had a business for 20 years doing this, but I had to get much clearer. I had to get more focused. I had to get in tune with, wait, if I have to pick one thing, what am I most interested in bringing across in the world? What is my mission? And so writing my content has been an incredible, it's been a workshop in self-actualization. And I was nearing 60 when I started doing this. So sometimes people come to me and they say, I've done all that. And I think, no. My dad, whose mother died and his father ran away, I just got some writing from him. He's also taught writing classes. And I just got some more writing from him where there was a new realization about it. There was a new piece with it. And I'm helping a woman write her memoir. And pretty soon I identified a story that would really bring through the message she wanted, and she couldn't tell it because it's still so painful for her. And that's the thing. I believe writing is like water. It just washes through you. So my belief is, and I've seen it happen with others, as she continues to write about this, even though she's done therapy, even though she thinks she's completely healed from it, which we know if we still have reactions to something, we're not, she will wash away and cleanse some of that reactivity to what happened. And that will really become her message out in the world.
Yeah, beautiful. So if someone wanted to write their stories to promote the work that they're doing, how would they get started?
I think it's important to look at first, what is it that you really want to teach? I've noticed with a lot of people, and myself included, we want to teach everything, And when I came into this, I wanted to teach. I was pretty much teaching creativity and writing, but I had to still focus more. So it was a process of that. So there is some process of just writing to find out what you're truly wanting to teach, and then reaching out to other people you know and writing to them and finding out what it is that they're most interested in learning about. And what that you do is what helped them the most. And I think that combination, so there's this learning process that goes on. And then if you want to start writing your story, and I actually have a template for this that I'm finishing up, it's very important to identify the moments, which I call the Scarlett O'Hara moments, which are the ones where you're, oh my God, I don't care if there's a war going on. I don't care, whatever. Here's what's important to me, saving Terra. Land is what is important. I'm going to save that no matter what. And when we have those moments of realization, they become the middle of our story. And then we can tell the story around that. So it's a real shortcut to creating the stories that you want to tell, either through teaching or through your website and your business, your brand story. What is it you really love?
Yeah, so I heard a couple things in what you just shared. And one is like, I call it, what's your stand? What's the stand that you're taking? What are you standing for? What are you standing for in the world? What's really important to you? What's that core? I see it like this, like, you know, I'm holding this staff and I'm taking a stand, and putting a stake in the ground is another term to use about that. So what is it that's so important that you believe in? And when I teach branding, we talk about your brand stand. It's the core message, you know. And so for me and my business, it's that I believe women and entrepreneurship is the thing that's going to change the world. So when women are more successful at starting businesses and running successful businesses and growing businesses successfully in the world, then just by the nature of it being women-led, women-driven, you know, women on the board of directors, women in the C-suite of that company, it's going to make a difference. And studies have shown that, and studies have also shown that statistically we aren't as successful in the first 5 years of business as male founders. And so I'm on a mission with World Changing Women to help make sure women are successful so that we can make the change that we want to make. That's the stand I'm taking. And I'm taking a stand for women, and I'm taking a stand for entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurial principles are what we need, both in the nonprofit world, you know, in the business world, in government. Like, we need entrepreneurship, innovation, ideas, creativity, all of those things that entrepreneurship brings to the table. Scrappiness, you know, like the ability to like just lean in and get stuff done. And so I want to ask everyone listening and anyone who's here, if you can share in the comments, what's the stand you're taking? That's the core of your story. And so what Kelly is saying is like, from there, other things I heard you say, Kelly, is like starting to ask people what they want from you. What are the stories, you know? So there's this give and take. It's not just you broadcasting your story, but there's a connection between the viewer, the listener of your story, and you, and that story is evolving. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. And there's so much I want to say. Hi, Vicki. That's the first thing I'll say. I see her. She's listening in. If you want to change the world, I believe you're right. You're wearing a t-shirt that says "Be the change." I believe that starts with an internal change. And this is somewhat serious. Someone I'm working on their memoir with, just recently, a significant, well, I hate that word, her husband was accused of someone by the Me Too movement of doing something inappropriate. And she had also accused several other people. And she is a person who's having a lot of turmoil in her own life in terms of working with people. So what's happening is she's really reacting to her own, in this particular case, she's reacting to her own material. And she's putting it out there on the world. So for her to heal, and I think women to heal, and for us to earn as much money as men, we have to start taking those things back in and say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, there are men like that in the world. And what's my material? How did I help create that? One of my best teachers that I ever had was a man who said, I'd say, oh, this happened or that happened. And he'd say, well, how'd you get him to do it to you? That's pretty profound. How'd you get him to do it to you? And I think as women, it's so great that we're getting into business. It's so great that being a great business owner and being successful is requiring us to tell our stories, because we have to get clear on them. And when we get clear on them, we get out of vagueness and we start to see our own material and we start to take responsibility. Isn't that what being in business is all about? How am I 100% responsible for the money I'm bringing in? I'm no longer working for somebody. I'm doing this for myself. So how can I, and not from a place of fault or blame. I work with people in a non-judgmental way because we have to be free to say, hey, I blame people for this. And then take that blame back in and go, wow, how am I blaming myself? How am I still grieving that? How can I heal by helping others grieve? And that becomes your story for your business. You know what I'm saying? If that's what you do. Yeah. And I find that people often want to, I want to tell stories because I love telling them and I want to do more of it. And so what do? I help people tell their stories. And I think, and you're building a business. So a lot of times we're helping others do what we are doing and we're ahead of them on the road and we're learning as we go. So I think the story is, I guess if I have a mission, Kim, it's that everybody get out of vagueness on their stories and they get very specific about them. And through that, they heal. Because when we take that healed story take any story out into the world, we begin to heal the world. That's how I see it.
I love that, Kelly. And, I feel like it's yes about the vagueness, like getting out of vagueness and getting really specific and it's also about being authentic and vulnerable, right? Because you were the one who was sharing something with me about how it's really hard to know if something's true when you just hear it repeated over and over. If a story's true, right? But if our intention is to really help transform humanity, transform people's lives, or transform industries, like, Vicki posted, she's standing for helping women learn new leadership skills to take their business to the next level and make a bigger impact, right? And I know that Vicki works with big companies as well. And so sometimes it's transforming industries or transforming governments, or, everybody has a different vision. I feel personally that your story is very powerful when you bring authenticity and vulnerability to it, and you're telling the truth.
Well, let's talk about that because it's challenging. So I know Vicki goes into large corporations, for example, and her whole business, and she can write about this on the side, is probably to straighten them out on their story. Because every corporation I've ever worked with and gone into to do their marketing materials, that's what I used to do for a living, they usually are very familiar with a story that they have, and it takes outside people to come in and say, open their eyes and take a fresh look at things. And I think the quote I sent you, and I don't remember it verbatim, is by a Pulitzer Prize winner, and I forget his name, but he's saying, you know, if we repeat something often enough, we become so familiar with it, we think it's the truth. It's not necessarily the truth. And so I teach improvisation for writers, because what improvisation does is, in the process of doing it, we get outside of race, outside of popular conceptions about things, and we try to just look at how present is the person, how in touch with their intuitive nature are they. And I think that's hard to judge sometimes. So it takes a little bit of, like, I'll be listening to people write in the class, and then one day I'll go, oh my God, you were totally in the zone, weren't you? Yeah, they forgot themselves. They forgot their beliefs and everything they know. And there's these words of truth that come through, and you can hear them. You know, you can hear them because they're, I don't know. I mean, you know, you've experienced this. You're working with people in marketing, and when you hear words of truth, you're like, oh yeah, okay, get that out there in the world.
Right.
Because that. So I think being authentic is about truth. And when I talk about being specific, I'm very passionate about this. So let's just say, I'm going to give you an example. Someone comes in my workshop and they write, so-and-so abandoned me. The word abandoned is a story about a story. It's not what actually happened. Your idea of abandonment is different than my idea. So no one out there, no one that you're trying to engage with, no reader is going to come in if instead you say, gosh, the father went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came back, so the Gram said. And then he came back when my father was 16 years old, which my father never told me until years later, and sat on the porch and said to my father, hey, I would like to keep in touch with you. Why don't you call me? And then after he left, the Gram said, he'll never call you. And he also found out that the Gram had kept all the letters away from him that he had sent. So when you start in search of truth, and I'm really never more important time for this than now, because we can listen to the news and the truth is put out there over and over again, the supposed truth. It's not necessarily the truth. So I'm just being mindful. What is the real truth? It's not necessarily the story that's on this news station or that news station. It's let's do some investigation. What's the real truth here? So I think it's important at a national level. I think it's important for us building our businesses. I think it's so important for personal development. If you can't see the truth about why you're not with a man, you better start seeing it. Because you're just going to create the same exact crappy relationship that your picker has created before. You know what I'm saying? It just operates. I don't know if I'm getting off topic here, but I think that's true for our business. We create a story and then we create the clients that we want to create.
Right. Yeah.
Based on that truth we've come to.
What we put out there, we receive back to us. So I'd love to hear, you know, I love it when this is juicy, and that's why I call this Conversations That Matter, right? Because sometimes we get into controversial things and it's okay, right? These conversations are important to have. So if you're watching this, I'd love for you to type in the comments, what do you feel like you have a responsibility to tell the truth in your stories around your business specifically? And what do you see as the possibility for yourself and your business if you are taking a stand and if you're telling the truth about things, even if that truth is your truth, your perspective, your stand, right? Like there's tons of people who won't believe me, but won't believe the same things I believe about we need to put more energy behind women to create businesses in the world. They'll say it doesn't matter. Let's just create more businesses, or let's have less business, Or, right, like there's going to be a million other points of view. But because I'm taking a stand and having a point of view, I'm going to attract the people into my community and my work and my offerings that resonate with that point of view, right? And they're women who want to be supported. And so that's great with me. And I know that not everybody's going to agree. So I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. And then I also just want to say what I see happening a lot, because I work with people in branding and marketing, is that they really want to stay safe. Mm-hmm. And they're telling stories, but it's kind of a superficial story, in my opinion. And it doesn't really resonate because it's watered down and it's trying to be safe and trying to appeal to everyone. We say in marketing, when you're marketing to everyone, you market to no one, you know? And so Kelly, I'd love to know, you know, I know that you're more about creativity, but you do help a lot of business owners.
Well, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've had to do it.
So what's your perspective on that? On
this is 20 some years of doing this, and it's a process, and we need to be gentle with ourselves, because coming out and peeking at, you know, creativity, this truthfulness that I'm talking about is definitely, you would say, in the shadows, because we're brought up, and rightfully so, to protect ourselves. And you can't just say, take that all down all at once. You know, there's usually a process. And thank God I stopped drinking, because in that process, I learned to start telling the truth about that. Mm. Then I go to write my poetry, and it's so false. You know, it's so filled with gimmicks and me trying to be liked and trying to have my poetry liked. That's just the truth. So that was a process. Then I go to get online and take what I've been doing and all the teaching, and suddenly I'm being fake again a little bit. You know, I can't get to my real story. Again, that was a creative process of penetrating what it was that is the truth for me. So I think truth is, I'm not, well, I am sometimes black and white. I'm more, my husband is more. I wish I could see the world that way sometimes. I see the world as shades of gray, and he says sometimes I'm indecisive. I'm not indecisive. I just believe that we need to get into this observer self, this it's like in an omniscient narrator in old time fiction. Not many people do it anymore, where it's not judging anything. It's just showing the events. So when you take all the emotion off events and you just start opening up to everything coming in, you can just make a more informed decision about your business, about anything, the world. You know, I'm not going to sort out the world in this conversation. I just think that it's important to, yeah. I just think it's important for all of us to slow down and really hear each other. I personally will not put anything political on my pages, because I'm concerned that I'll be misunderstood. And I've never felt that way before. And I don't want to be misunderstood, and I don't want that to be the point. So and I think this is good advice for everyone. If you want a business, just leave all that stuff, mostly, unless that's your business, just off your website, unless that's what you want to just attract those people. And then I'd be very, very clear on what is the real truth as we promote it. Because I think
I want to recap, because you said a lot, and I want to make sure we're getting to the point of this. And so my question to you, so what I heard you say, because I was saying, you know, what's your responsibility in telling the story? And what I heard you say is be gentle with yourself, allow it to be a process. So you might not know what your story is right off the gate. And especially if you're starting a business, you won't know your story. And it is a personal transformation journey, just the telling of the story. Like, what is your stand? What do you want to say? What's important to get out there? So allow it to be an unfolding process is what I heard. And I just need to give Kelly a little plug, because I don't know any better way to allow your story to unfold than to work with her inside of some of her programs. Improvisational writing is her amazing creation and contribution to the world. And I've been able to be in her courses and experience that and allow my story to unfold. And as I do, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger year after year. And so I'm so grateful for that. So we'll definitely provide links for you guys to check out Kelly's programs and to learn more about working with her. But Kelly, I also heard you say your position is to look at what the truth is, but also look at how to not be misunderstood. And I think that's challenging. I think if you're going to take a stand for anything, like I was saying, there will always be an equal and opposite perspective on that. The polarity, if you're really saying, I say this is truth,
Great. And yeah, I want to address this. I spent a lot of time studying compassionate communication, and I use it in all my classes. So the problem, I'm just going to use political discussions. My husband likes to get in them, and I say, don't be bringing these people to bed with us. I only want you and I in bed. Anyway, that's supposed to be a joke, but I would just, we need a little humor with that stuff now.
Yeah.
But I think the real thing is, how can we get curious? I stand for that. How can I listen to your beliefs? How can I go, well, tell me more, even when I don't necessarily, on first glance, subscribe to what you're saying? Well, compassionate communication and my workshops, I think, teach us to slow down, to first take in what the other person's saying. And we do that by when you share your story or what you've written that day, which, by the way, we're in a writing revolution. People have to write even if they hate writing nowadays to be in business for themselves. And we sit back and we say, oh, well, what we heard is this and what we heard is that. And we just make sure that the other person can hear what we're hearing. And that increases your chances of being understood. The other thing we do is we get out of our emotions to some degree. We write about them, or we just try to get into what I call the observer self and just observe them, because they're not necessarily true. Fear is, I learned this when I got sober, false evidence appearing real. That's going on a lot, because there's a lot of fear going on. And so I guess what I'm saying is slowing down, taking in what the other person is saying, and just being curious. My husband's more conservative than I am by far. I've had to slow down, ask him questions, get curious. I was able to write a poem about it because I realized this is his idea of how to protect me, protect the country. And when I understood that, I quit pointing fingers at him. Well, not always, but I quit pointing fingers. I was able to take in what he was saying and even create art out of it. And more than that, I don't have to marry someone that thinks exactly as I think. I get to marry a man who loves me and adores me and treats me incredible. And sometimes we differ on our opinions, because we sit down when we get different and we just go through it. We just listen back, we repeat back, then the other person asks questions. And by the way, I'll just say this about men. I learned this from my friend Marla. They have a harder time because they want to help you. So sometimes you have to make them turn their back on you and write down what you say. And sometimes I have to do that, because you don't want to jump in right away with your own opinions. So anyway, what has this got to do with creating your story for your business? It has a ton to do. I think we have to get curious, not just what we think and not just what we believe, but what are What are other people thinking and believing? How can we quit reacting to people? The best class I ever taught was the last Artist Way class that I taught at the Bodhi Tree, which was a big bookstore in LA. And I had two guys who went after me. And I mean, this is on the 10th week of a class. And they both went after me. They both had resistance all quarter. And I handled them with the compassionate communication. I repeated back what they were saying. I took it in. I said what I needed from them. I described things. I had more people sign up that quarter than I ever had sign up any other quarter with me. And they stayed with me longer. So what I'm going to say is story is a two-way thing. I want to hear your story. I want to get curious. Why do you think the way you do? Why do you believe as you do? And I find that if we look for those commonalities in our stories, there's more that exist than don't. And one of the most, I'm going to say Oprah Winfrey had a challenge day where she had high school students get together and people where there were a lot of violence going on in the schools. And they had kids stand up if you're been molested at home, stand up if you've been this, stand up if you've been this. And they found out all these kids that were making fun of each other and hated each other and weren't in the same clique. What does that sound like, being in the same clique? They had so much in common. They had come from similar homes, similar challenges, and they were forever changed that day.
I love that. Yeah. So finding the commonalities. And I think that, writing your stories and checking in with people, like you're saying, to see how are these stories landing and getting really curious. I would say from a business perspective, getting curious about your clients and what they care about and what their pain is and what their beliefs are, and finding the bridges, finding the ways to connect their stories and your stories.
Right. Most people tell their story, and we were taught this, and I was doing it. We share the process of what we're doing. We're doing this process. People don't care about that. That's what I've learned the last 4 years. What they care about are the questions. They're down, if there's a mountain, they're at the bottom of the mountain with whatever process you're teaching. They don't care about the process. What they care about is their pain and how we can solve it. And stories can solve that pain. And your story can solve someone else's pain.
That's right. And one of my favorite things to say is your marketing is your story well told. And therefore, marketing can change lives. If you're telling stories and you're creating, your marketing is just your story, like getting your story out into the world, sharing the possibility around what you're creating, sharing your stand, telling stories in ways that move and inspire people and inspire them into action, actually helps transform their lives, and can also transform your business. So,
and what I've loved about working with you, I've come back to looking at my business as a local business. There was something about taking it online. I was talking to people yesterday about this too, that we think we have to, or I thought that I had to appear a certain way and do it a certain way. In the end, business is intimate. My classes online are intimate. My marketing needs to be as intimate as I can make it. And I just want to say, and what does intimate mean? Well, the definition of intimacy is into me, I see. And so just taking it on and talking to people, I don't know, that just, and you've taught me that, you've brought me back again to what I know is true, which is just being myself in a very local way, and then just letting the word spread. And it's not that I don't know that. We all know so much. I mean, by my age, I know a lot. I've been teaching a lot. And I continually need to go through this process we talked about earlier. It's a shedding of layers and skins, and in one area and then another area. So
yeah.
I like the growth process. So
yeah, and I think that I do too. I think Kelly
do.
Personal growth enthusiasts and lifelong learners. And if you are too, and you want to find ways to unleash your stories, unleash your creativity, light up the world with your stories, as Kelly says, how can people find out more about you, Kelly?
Yeah, my website is www. I have to always put that in there, creativelife.com. And I am teaching introductory courses to improvisational writing. And you'll learn the basic creative tools, which you can use to write your story, or you can start writing your story in those live classes where we work together to collaboratively bring your story forward in the world. So they're very practical. I believe in experiential writing of the story.
Very experiential, very powerful.
Yeah.
I was in one class of Kelly's and just started writing and realized that I'm a good writer, and when I make time for it and I do these very simple improvisational writing exercises that she teaches, the words just flow out of me, and it's so fun and it's so fulfilling. And it is a journey of diving into yourself to discover a journey of self-discovery. And then from there, what do you want to say about your business, your brand? Whether you have a personal brand and it's you, or you have something like I do that's World Changing Women, and we're, the brand is taking the stand. The brand is telling the stories, but they come from me, and they come from my members, and they come from the community that we're creating. And so it's super powerful. So definitely go check out creativelife.com. Let us know what you thought about this conversation that matters. And definitely post below. Let us know what your business is, what you thought about this, what ideas and possibilities were sparked from this conversation. And we'd love to hear from you. Kelly, is there any final words that you'd like to say?
The last thing I want to say is that story's not just for building your brand. It makes you a better teacher. It makes you, getting a book out there in the world, bringing forward people's stories helps you bring your brand about. And being a teacher and telling the stories there, like I did through this, makes it much more interesting for your students, and they can learn better. So I don't want to just put it down to making your brand. It's really, if you're going to teach classes or you want to write a book, that's real important. And I help with all of those things. So
yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So in creating a book, you're really sharing and teaching along the way, whether it's fiction, nonfiction. Kelly can help you with that. And yeah, this is particularly useful if you're a coach, a consultant, a thought leader, someone who really wants to share and teach. And yeah, so wonderful. Thank you, Diane. She said, Kelly, you're amazing. Just what I wanted to hear. And thank you all.
Hi, Diane.
For watching, and have a wonderful day, and definitely get your stories into the world, because the world needs your story. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kim.
All right. Bye.